Is that Kirkman basically said, look, because he had no power. Again, like unless you have major power, once the company offers you money for your property, they don't they don't care what you think. They're just going to give you the money for your property. Obviously, they have to convince you to trust them, but they're not going to sit there and be going through you, and all you are is a lowly comic book person to make a multi-million-dollar movie. That's not how that works. Like, they know what they're doing. The thing about Invincible 2, for those of you who want to create comics that I have an incredible respect for with Invincible, is that Robert Kirkman, I don't know if you heard the story about this, but so Robert Kirkman went and he developed, he did his comic for Invincible, and it wasn't a big success. The Invincible comic was never a huge success. It was well regarded. I knew about it. I didn't read it at the time, but it was well regarded, but it wasn't a big sales success. It took years for Walking Dead to become a massive sales success. Still, Kirkman was, he was known. People respected what he did and so forth. Where he took Invincible, and so he actually sold the rights for it. What they call it is an option. So if you're a creator and a company says we want to make your show into an animated movie or a TV show or a live action program, they option it. So basically, they give you a little bit of money, and then you give them the rights to develop something. Now, what happens is that typically they have 3 to 5 years to develop it, okay? And a lot of times, because you're the creator, you'll never know, right? If you're not a super successful person, unless you're J.K. Rowling and you've had a ton of success with like Harry Potter before Warner Brothers ever gets involved, you'll never know how far they'll go with the product when they option it. They're not going to tell you, they're not going to check in every week. You'll find out obviously eventually, but you're not a key part of the team, basically. And so the bottom line is that Kirkman, if you hear the story he tells a story great on a YouTube episode, the first one he did with Kevin Smith on Fat Man on Batman. You can find it on YouTube, and it's the episode where they're talking about the coming Invincible animated show. He did 2 where he talked about the end of the animated show. The first one, he talks about the animated show coming and debuting stuff. And he talks about how Paramount have the rights to make Invincible, and they couldn't develop it far enough because they kept running into problems with Kirkman in the sense that they were like, look, we think this should be like The Godfather. And if you guys don't know, Paramount was the original distributors and made the film The Godfather with Francis Ford Coppola and Marlon Brando. Great movie. If you've never seen it, go check out Godfather. But long story short, they wanted that, and Kirkman's like, but that's not what it is. Yes, there's a superhero who's actually a bad guy who's the father, but the show is not Godfather type stuff. And so obviously I don't know all the details of it, but the point of the matter is that Kirkman, if you don't know the story, Kirkman, obviously at that time had Walking Dead. And one of the things he did with Walking Dead is he actually made himself a producer. Now, he didn't make himself a producer, and eventually we'll have a chance to talk to him. I'll have a chance to talk to him and interview him for one of these shows. But I can tell you that, or at least I hope so. I'd imagine I should be able to. He seems to be a very open guy, and Saturday M is getting pretty big, so hopefully I have a chance to talk to him. But I'm sure I'll meet him at some point. But the point of the matter is that having done business in this realm, I can tell you that what I suspect happened is that Kirkman basically said, look, because he had no power. Again, like unless you have major power, once the company offers you money for your property, they don't care what you think. They're just going to give you the money for your property. Obviously, they have to convince you to trust them, but they're not going to sit there and be going through you, and all you are is a lowly comic book person to make a multi-million-dollar movie. That's not how that works. Like, they know what they're doing. And there are a lot of folks who've been very successful who have had very frustrating experiences with films that were successful because they didn't like the way it was done. Stephen King, very successful horror writer, has famously talked about the Shining movie that was made by the incredibly popular and well-regarded Stanley Kubrick, with the famous Jack Nicholson scene where he smashes the axe through the door to his wife, trying to get her in the bathroom. He's like, here's Johnny. Well, that whole film, Stephen King hates that movie. He hates it. And this is Stephen King. And he was Stephen King. He was a younger Stephen King, but he was still Stephen King when that movie was made. Stanley Kubrick was well regarded, so was Stephen King. Stephen King had a lot of power, or had more power than the average creator does. And Stephen King couldn't, he didn't have much to say in what they did with that. In fact, famously, this is what led him to make the Creepshow movies. If you ever saw the Creepshow movies, that's why he got involved with that, because he was so tired of having his works converted to film, and he was selling millions of copies of books. He was one of the most famous writers of the last, 40 years, and he was having to, like, Hollywood was treating him like he was a nobody, even though they would give him money. Because the way Hollywood looks at it is like, look, I think I can make money on your property, so I'm going to give you money, and then you get the hell out of my way because I know how to make movies, you don't. And that's part of the problem. So Kirkman, for Walking Dead, he actually decided to do something interesting. He decided to work with the producers of Walking Dead, not to be in control. He just said, hey, look, I want to be a scriptwriter. I want to be a writer in the writing room. I won't have any extra power. In fact, I can kind of serve as a consultant. And typically, they'll make you a consultant. But this was interesting because Kirkman was like, look, I want to learn how to be a writer in Hollywood. So, and the only way I'm going to learn is to actually be a part of it. So he negotiated for himself for the rights to Walking Dead. So when AMC said, we want Walking Dead, he was able to hold out, even though he wasn't asking for any extra power, just at least have a seat at the table by being a writer. This matters because what Kirkman figured out was that he was able to build up his credibility all those years. Walking Dead became a mass success, of course. He was actually able to build up that success. And that's what's really interesting about that whole situation, is that Kirkman built up that success, and then when it came time for Invincible, the second time, because Paramount was arguing with them about what they were going to do with the license rights. Or not arguing, but Paramount was just, they had a different philosophy. Kirkman didn't agree with it. They could never get it to work, so eventually it just faded. So once it faded, then Kirkman then decided that he was going to try something different. He waited. He says this to Kevin Smith. He's like, I waited. He's like, I didn't push it. Obviously, Walking Dead was becoming incredibly successful. At one point, Walking Dead had 17 million viewers per episode. Well, certainly one of the season premiere, I think season 5. So Kirkman, took the lessons that he learned, took the success that he was now being granted, because he actually he wasn't just a creator of comic books. He was a successful TV writer and producer. And then he had a lot more power with Invincible, and so he decided to rewrite where he have a chance to do some cool stuff. So it was really interesting to see, how that whole thing came out. And he talked about how he had to rewrite what he was doing with Invincible because he had learned so much with the TV show. He had to rewrite the comic so that he could actually be really good developing the script, developing the story, so it came across in a different way. And I think if you look at, what we ultimately end up seeing in the show, then you realize just how significant it is. You realize just how strong the writing is. It's amazing. And so I think that's where things really seem to get good, is that we end up with just this really cool scenario where you can see the development of Kirkman. And for all of you writers who are hoping to become writers, hoping to become creators, you get to see how he develops all of that. You get to see how he's able to put all of that together if you follow his career. He starts off creating comics. He has, decent success, not crazy success. When he finally gets a TV deal with Walking Dead, he says, look, I know I'm not going to get the power that I want, so I'll do the deal. I think the only thing that he put his foot down on was that he wanted the series to be gory, and NBC, which was a major TV network here in America, they wanted to do it, but they weren't going to be able to be gory because they were on network TV, which had broadcast standards. So he pretty much put his foot down about cable. It went to cable, and then eventually things turned from there. So really cool stuff. And I think that, at the end of the day, if you're interested, if you're excited about trying to be a creator, look to Robert Kirkman, look what he did, and then look at how great, because again, Walking Dead, was a phenomenon. I wasn't a big fan of the Walking Dead show, but it was a phenomenon. All credit to Kirkman and that team, Darabont, AMC, and everything they did with Walking Dead. But Invincible is the evolution of Kirkman as an entertainment producer, because you can see just how well the scripts are. You can see how well he developed that script from episode 1 through episode 8, so that like, for example, if you follow the comic books, that whole thing that the father does where he kills all the other heroes, that happened issues into the series. It didn't happen in the first issue. It took several issues to get there. But in the TV show, because he had spent time working on Walking Dead, his own creation. He understood, he learned how to frame that, how to make the series stronger by rearranging what he had in the comic and putting it into a narrative that would work out as a TV show. So really interesting stuff, and I think hopefully you guys check out Invincible. But for me, I think it's a revolutionary series. Really, really excited for it, and super excited for it.